Now, given it's better to talk about these things using examples rather than just abstract ideas, I've pulled out the information, the key information from the question from the textbook. Now, if you don't happen to have the textbook with you, this is the key information that you need. It's not as presented as nicely as you would see in the textbook, but we're working with the environment that we have here. Now, the control date, the 1st of January 2000X0, not super important, but for the extent that we're going to be dealing with the 31st of December 2000X2. So 1 year has passed after the acquisition before we get to the year that we're currently dealing with. May not have an impact on this particular question, but something to bear in mind. Now, things which are important when we go through the acquisition analysis, we have to have a look at the pre-acquisition equity. And when we see share capital of Corio, the subsidiary, has $3.5 million and retained earnings is 1.6. Now, we also have to look out for any adjustments based on fair value adjustments. And in this case, there is also a fair value adjustment of land, which is understated in its books by $1 million. So that is something that we're going to have to deal with as a first step before we do the actual acquisition analysis. The cash consideration paid was $5 million, so we know when we do the acquisition analysis, when we're trying to figure out goodwill or bargain purchase, $5 million is what we're comparing the fair value of the net assets to. Now, some additional stuff which we haven't looked at, which hasn't been necessary prior to a non-100% ownership situation, is the percentage of the ownership and, if you're provided it, the fair value of the non-controlling interest at the control date. We'll talk a little bit about this more later on, but the fair value of the non-controlling interest is $1.5 million, and the ownership percentage that Yarra Park has taken in Corio is 75%. Now, some additional stuff that we have to go through. Corio's profit was $870,000 for the year. Included within that were a number of intergroup revenue items that we have to deal with. We have lease and we have interest revenue. Corio also paid dividends. Just get rid of those. Corio also paid dividends at $460,000. Now, not all of those were to Yarra Park, as 75% of ownership was by Yarra Park, which means 25% was owned by somebody else. There is also $670,000 in an intra-group loan. The tax rate is 30%, which is pretty standard for Australia, and the retained earnings for Corio on the 1st of January 2000X2, so the start of this year, was $2.120 million. This becomes important when we start to have a look at the memorandum account.